Good day, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mark Haglund. I'm a contributing editor to Healthcare Purchasing News. It's my pleasure and my honor today to welcome our special guest, Nathan Brown, who is a partner in the food, drug, and device practice at Akin Gump. Nathan, welcome. Great to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be with you.
Great. Absolutely. Just tell us a little bit about your title and role, and then we'll dive into some questions that I have for you.
Thank you. I'm, as you mentioned, a lawyer and a partner at the law firm of Akin Gump. I previously served at the Food and Drug Administration and also served on the Senate Help Committee on FDA issues. And I help a wide variety of companies as well as hospitals and providers on FDA-related issues.
Fabulous. Well, we need you today to answer some questions regarding some regulatory issues. So let's plunge in. The FDA recently announced a new medical device product classification, whole room microbial reduction device, that established FDA regulation of UV robots intended to reduce the number of pathogens on surfaces and, more specifically, non-critical medical device surfaces in healthcare facilities. Can you tell us what FDA authorization means for hospitals using UV robots and the companies that manufacture these types of robots?
In the United States, in our system, all medical devices are classified based on level of risk. And the FDA, as you noted, recently established a new device classification as a moderate risk type of device, or class 2, as it's known in our system. And that applies for any UV products intended to reduce microbial load on non-porous, non-critical medical device surfaces, such as hospital beds, wheelchairs, IV poles, and other medical equipment that's common in patient rooms and operating rooms. FDA also clarified in issuing this classification that these products are required to submit an application to FDA and to receive FDA clearance before the product can be marketed and distributed in the United States. When FDA classifies a new type of device, as it did here using what's called a de novo process, it determines what types of controls or protections are necessary for that type of device. And in this case, FDA determined that for this type of UV technology, when used in healthcare settings and on medical equipment, that pre-market review and clearance is necessary to provide a reasonable assurance of the safety and effectiveness. In other words, confirm that the UV product works as it claims and it doesn't pose risks either to people or to medical equipment. And as a result of FDA's classification action, FDA's authorization is now required to market or distribute UV microbial reduction devices intended for use in patient rooms or operating rooms or other areas where medical device equipment is present. So products distributed without FDA clearance would be considered adulterated and misbranded and would be subject to FDA enforcement action.
Is this kind of de novo process unusual, or is this something that we should be expecting?
It's a process that is less common than other types of FDA clearances, and it is used specifically when FDA has not previously created a classification for a type of device. And so what they need to do is sort of set the rules, if you will, for the first time. And then that becomes a classification that is to be used for any product of that type going forward.
That totally makes sense. Thank you so much, Nathan. So let me ask this. Some UV vendors say that they are actually regulated by the EPA and not the FDA. What's the difference between EPA products used in hospitals and FDA-approved medical devices used in hospitals?
So it's a very good question, and it's a very confusing area. So the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, and FDA are not mutually exclusive in terms of jurisdiction.
Hmm.
The EPA has authority over UV products that make claims for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any type of pest, such as a microorganism. These are federally regulated by EPA under a statute called FIFRA, and they're subject to various requirements, registering your establishment where you produce these devices, and certain labeling requirements. So, and they call them pesticidal devices. So a pesticidal device can also be subject to FDA authority if it qualifies as a medical device. Through its recent classification action, FDA has confirmed that a UV device used in the presence of medical equipment and medical equipment surfaces, and certainly UV devices for which the companies that make them are making claims about preventing hospital-acquired infections, for example, those would also be medical devices from an FDA perspective. So a UV product that is characterized as regulated by EPA is not absolved from FDA regulation. It would still potentially be in violation of federal law if it was an unapproved medical device.
I so appreciate that clarification. I think that probably a lot of people would be confused by that because there are a lot of federal agencies there.
There are.
Yeah, involved. So, great. So, what, tell me, what is the potential risk for hospitals that invest in UV technology going forward into the future? What are we looking at here?
Well, now that that FDA has established a classification for whole room UV products for use in healthcare facilities, FDA will expect the companies in this sector to go through the clearance process or to stop distributing those products. Hospitals should make sure they have full transparency as to the legal status of any of these products before they invest in them, or if they're using them, to also determine what their status is. If a product should have FDA clearance and does not, FDA may expect that company to stop offering the product until they obtain FDA authorization. They might, in that case, receive a warning letter from FDA. They could potentially be enjoined from selling the product or be directed to recall the product from the market until they obtain FDA clearance. Or if they're products that are imported, those imports could potentially be refused entry as illegal products. Any of these scenarios could be very disruptive for a hospital that is depending on one of these products. It may also turn out that some of the claims being made cannot be substantiated, and the permissible uses of these products would need to change in order for the company to obtain FDA clearance. So hospitals should carefully scrutinize what the claims are that are being made for these products, particularly if they have not been FDA authorized, and should exercise due diligence in making contracting decisions, particularly considering whether the UV products they are thinking about purchasing are legally marketed and whether to continue to use them. Using an unauthorized product could have any number of adverse implications for the hospital system or lead to disruptions.
Wow, that's kind of like buyer beware on steroids.
Yes, yes.
And I appreciate your clarification because that gets into a very nuanced area, and I think a lot of people might easily get confused as to what they need to do. There's definitely a high burden on hospital leaders to do the right thing and not make assumptions. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in some ways, though, this also is helpful because it provides clarity in an area that up to now, I think, had a great deal of confusion, particularly coming out of COVID, where there was such a focus on disinfection technologies and maintaining a safe environment for patients and providers. So in many ways, this is important for hospitals because it means that UV products, going forward are subject to clear standards for performance and to having those claims validated by presenting data to FDA. So that also essentially empowers hospitals to have a guidepost to measure and validate products that they have the opportunity to use. If a UV product has been reviewed and cleared by FDA, the hospital can be confident that the product performs as it claims based on its cleared indications for use. That's the language that FDA uses. And that might be in terms of what they're claiming for log reduction of pathogens, for what organisms that the product is effective against, that it avoids any adverse events in terms of effects on medical equipment, and generally the safety of the product in terms of ozone, other things that can be released, or other types of concerns. FDA cleared products also are subject to quality system requirements, and their manufacturers have to track and address malfunctions and other issues. So there is greater transparency and reliability given the existence of this new FDA classification.
That's wonderful. And everything that you're saying speaks to hospital leaders needing to educate themselves so that they can be prepared, correct?
That's correct. And this will be an evolving area. At this time, with the FDA new classification, as of the last time I reviewed the FDA database, which is public, of the various UV products that are being offered, there is one, the Xenex LightStrike Plus UV robot. That is the one that has clearance from FDA as a whole room microbial reduction medical device. So that has gone through the FDA review process. It's been cleared by FDA to be marketed and distributed in the United States. And there may be other products coming online, but at this time, that is the first product that FDA has cleared.
Terrific. Thank you for that insight. So, broadly speaking, Nate, going forward, what should hospitals consider as they invest in UV technology? What kinds of questions should leaders be asking themselves, and how should they kind of navigate this space going forward?
I think the new developments give hospitals some additional questions and inquiries to inform their diligence as part of purchasing decisions. I think hospitals, in my experience, typically do ask about the legal and regulatory status of a product. But with this new development from FDA, it's appropriate to ask specifically whether the product has received FDA clearance, or if it hasn't, then what is the status of the product, and why not? It's also important for hospitals to consider, and every case will be a little bit different, but to the extent that they're using a product that is of questionable regulatory status, what the implications of that might be. And it may be, that has any number of possible implications depending on how that product is used within their overall cleaning protocols. But it could have, implications ranging from, different types of certifications to patient safeguards and liability risks. So it's important to factor all of that in as we now have this additional clarity from FDA.
Yeah. Clarity is such a good word. I think that one of the things that hospital leaders really need is some sense of how this regulatory landscape is going to move forward as these various product classifications and categories move forward. It's kind of a brave new world out there, right? And we want to make sure that hospital leaders are not caught unawares and don't end up creating problems for themselves, correct?
That's correct. And I think with this information, there is that opportunity. Typically, when FDA takes an action like this to create a new classification, particularly in an area that has been somewhat unclear or gray, they then expect the relevant industry sector to adapt very quickly. So, you can expect that FDA will probably be expecting other companies that offer these products to either come into FDA and submit applications, or to potentially cease sales or otherwise make appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts per what we've just discussed, Nate?
My only final thought would be, this is obviously an important area. Maintaining, you know, clean environments in the hospital setting is more important now than ever. And hospitals, I think, are appropriately looking at opportunities to stay ahead of the curve on that. I think UV technologies, when used appropriately and within the right legal and regulatory confines, are definitely an asset to hospitals in achieving their goals in terms of cleaning and safety of patients.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your wisdom today. We so appreciate it. I've been speaking with Nathan Brown, partner in the food, drug, and device practice at Akin Gump. Nate, really great to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This concludes today's discussion. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.